Peckham, believe it or not, has become quite a trendy area to live. It used to be known more for the violence and unsafe areas to walk back in the 80s, 90s and part of the noughties. Over the years I've collected news cuttings of some of the things of interest, and I thought I might have an article from the London newspaper The Standard on Peckham, or about Peckham being a magnet for the cool, bright, or perhaps not so bright young things. But delving into the vault where I keep those clippings, I couldn't find it, but it is mentioned online. However hip and trendy Peckham might be, there's always that element of violence still bubbling under the veneer of respectability and coolness. Last week, whilst in the flat, I recorded this. And yesterday morning, the 23rd of May, after exiting the block, was confronted by this. I reread some of those newspaper clippings I'd collected and hadn't seen for many a year, and was surprised at the age of those articles. Some I've circled with a pen and others I didn't, but do know why I found them of interest and a pen wasn't necessary. In these next two newspaper pages, I'm having some difficulty understanding just what attracted me to them. These, however, are about looks and medical conditions relating to how a person sees oneself and are self-explanatory. This final article is fascinating. I don't have the newspaper date, but looking online, it took place in 1996, 16 years before I became aware what I'd been experiencing since 2009 was a secret targeting program, and one where others were and are enduring very similar things. I'll begin by saying I don't condone actions of violence, particularly against kids, but can understand how some people will be tormented or targeted to the point they break, and tragic events like this will happen. And the teacher, Lisa Potts, deserves all the plaudits and recognition of being a heroine for the selfless act of trying to protect those infants. In this newspaper article, there's no mention of any particular mental health condition. Notice Mr. Campbell says he's been persecuted and ridiculed beyond endurance. What fascinates me also is those words that were directed at him are some of the same I've recorded, mainly by adults, but also from children. He mentions loser, failure, tramp and celibacy. I've recorded the words loser, dosser, weirdo and wanker, and they can be heard on my evidence-based videos via my YouTube and BitChute channels. I went online and typed in his name to find more information. This BBC page states he was a paranoid schizophrenic who imagined children were taunting him. I've no idea whether he was imagining their taunts, and nor whether he was a paranoid schizophrenic. I've been labelled delusional, but I would call into question the professional competency of the psychiatrist I saw. One I need to point out I saw voluntarily because I was told it might put an end to the police visits to the flat a few years ago, ones that verged on harassment because there was no valid reason for their unwanted presence. On being given that incorrect and perhaps deliberately incorrect diagnosis, the police visits did suddenly stop. Unlike Mr. Campbell, I have evidence of the persecutory and ridiculing taunts, and the police, as part of my targeting, have chosen to ignore it. One puzzling thing is, why did I cut out this article from 1996? I wasn't aware of my targeting until 2012, and the persecutory and ridiculing aspects I didn't become aware of until 2015, which is when I began collecting evidence. In 2016, I asked the police to investigate these taunts and occasional threats, which is when I learned that the police are part of the problem and are covering up the reality of these targeting operations. My brother has been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and you might know I am his primary carer. The only threat he has ever been is to himself, because he internalises things and harms himself. So I doubt I retained this because of him. Maybe I have the power or gift of foresight, able to realise it might be useful one day in the distant future to retain this article from way back in 1996.